Underway, and joining us now from the City of Jackson award-winning Department of Engineering, Troy White.
Thanks for having me, Bart.
Good to see you, Troy.
Good to be back.
Thanks for taking time out of the busy construction season. It's underway.
It's underway. It started. It's we got one job going now, and we got other ones getting ready to start up. You know, we've already we got them out there digging holes on West Avenue now between Carlton and Michigan Ave.
Yes. So this is a high-profile project because it's on a really heavily traveled street.
Correct. It's quite a job, and it's actually being done in two phases, two separate contracts with two separate contractors. First, we're doing water main replacement, and you know, I've been out here talking about water replacement so many times. We're replacing the water main, and then once that's done, we're going to come back and rebuild that intersection at Franklin. Yep, that's what you're seeing out there today. They're starting to dig holes. They're starting to put in water main pipe.
Wow.
And you know, like we talked before too, when we do water main pipe, we also have to replace all the services into the houses where we have those lead services. So it's quite a job.
So everyone's front lawn will be dug up?
Well, yeah.
Yes.
Some more than others. You know, they're pretty. We're getting pretty good at it. They're pretty strategic about how they do it. You know, they try to limit two things. One, the mess in the yard, and number two, the mess in the basement. But we have to go all the way into the basement to get all that lead pipe out.
Yeah, it's obviously major. This is as major as it gets, you know, digging all the way down.
Right. So right now we're doing the water main, and then probably in June we'll start on some of the road work. And you know, the road work will concentrate primarily on replacing the signal at Franklin and West, and then also realigning that intersection. I don't know if you can think about it top of your head, but there's a lot of extra pavement, extra widths, extra lanes. We're going to clean all that up so people know exactly where they're supposed to be driving.
Yeah, a lot of accidents.
Yeah, well, and there's been some high-profile accidents there too. So this will, you know, it'll make it much more intuitive of how to drive it safely and correctly.
All right, so coming soon, but how soon? What's the timeline for this project?
Well, like I said, they're started now. We got to get the water main done. I think they're going to start in June on the road work, and then hopefully get it done by the end of August. It's going to be a long one.
Summer.
Yes,
summer.
It's a summer job.
But as we like to say, it'll be nice when it's done.
Yes, it will be. And then the other thing, when you do things like this, especially like the water main, it hasn't been done in 100 years. And what we're doing now, these materials are going to last even longer. So, you know, once we do replace the underground work will last for a long time. Unfortunately, we live in Michigan, and pavement only lasts as long as it lasts. You know, so it won't be 100 years, but it'll be several decades.
Well, today, you know what today is? Today is the anniversary of the Flint water. It was on this day in 2014 that Flint officials decided to switch their water supply to the Detroit River, introducing poisonous lead into the city's water supply.
I was not aware that that was the anniversary today.
Yeah. Not being celebrated, obviously, because no doubt it's, you know, been lethal to people.
Yeah, and it really, you know, we're required to replace all the lead pipes, but we're replacing lead pipes as we should to eliminate potential for lead poisoning. But we don't have a lead poisoning problem in Jackson. But if you get those pipes out of it, you don't ever have to worry about it again. Like, we're just removing that potential.
And that's, I think, been the misconception, is that a lead pipe causes lead to leach into the water, and that's not.
No, it's really, I think the problem is the chemistry of the water. Now, our guys who run the water plant, they're out there doing their sampling like they're required, and they're constantly testing to make sure that, you know, something doesn't change where it does create a problem. And all our testing has always shown that we don't have a problem.
I think also the silver lining with what's happened in Flint is it makes communities like ours more aware that, you know, you're just, you know, how it could happen here.
It could, and it also says you can't mess around with it. You know, we've got to actually take this on, but at the same time, we have to be realistic about we're solving a potential problem, not an active problem, and you know, we need to work our way through that.
So is this what's happening on West Ave, is that's going to have to happen everywhere else, or is there just certain areas?
Well, what's happening on West Ave, there's two things going on. One, we're replacing old water main, and we have been replacing old water main since the 90s. and number two, then we're replacing those lead services.
Okay.
And we haven't always been replacing those lead services, but now we are.
Mm.
So what does that mean? That means where water mains have been replaced, they don't need to be replaced again.
Okay.
Some of our old water mains are appropriately sized. We'd like to replace them when we can, but they're not really creating a flow problem. They might be creating a water quality problem, but not a flow problem. So we will get to those with time. On West Ave, what we ended up having is, in addition to lead services, we have water mains that are too small, as well as old. So it makes sense to get those out of there.
I remember when you guys put the press release out at the start of this project, announcing the project, that residents in the area would notice some improvements once it's all done in terms of the water pressure.
Well, we'd expect it to operate a little better because when we say somebody out there has a 4-inch water main in front of their house, and we all know what 4 inches looks like, but over the years, as it's that pipe it builds up inside, and it actually is, that 4-inch water main might be acting like a 2-inch water main. You build that out to a nice 8-inch pipe without all that build up, and you're going to get better flows. But more importantly, you're going to get better water quality too. When anybody who lives anywhere, I guess, when you do seasonal flushing, you see that rust. We flush it to get that rust out, but when we replace it with newer pipe, you get a lot less of that to clean out.
And is it notable? People will be able to taste the difference?
Well, I don't think they'll taste the difference, but when we do flushing and we do have events in the system, you won't have as much of that rust that needs to be flushed out.
Can you taste differences in water? I can't.
I can taste it when I go somewhere other than home. I've grown up here in town, and I think that one thing that we probably don't do a good job, like tooting our own horn, is we've got great water quality here in the city of Jackson. I think if you go anywhere else,
I can well water.
Yeah,
well water. Yeah, definitely.
Right.
Especially around here.
If you water in the city and water outside of town, people run wells. There's a big difference there.
Yeah. All right, so that's one project. Let's see. We've also got Greenwood Avenue.
Between Morel and from Griswold to Morel.
That's a big stretch.
It's a big stretch, and that's not going to be one of those full depth pavement replacement projects. It's going to be more of a surface treatment where we're going to mill off the surface and then repave the top. We're not doing all the utility replacements and everything.
That shouldn't take a long time.
Right. It's like a preventative maintenance type project, heavy maintenance. Where we're going to mill it and repave it. And when we do those, we upgrade all the sidewalk ramps and make sure the sidewalks are all, we get rid of the toe stubbers and the broken sections and replace the sidewalk ramps so they work.
That wackety intersection, Greenwood first. What else is there at the Flatiron Building?
Oh, like where O'Neill and Greenwood and first come together. Well, years ago we rebuilt that First Street and Greenwood intersection on the north side, and we turned it in so that way cars coming into Greenwood are coming in at like a 90-degree angle. They get better visibility when they look up and down the street. With this project, we're actually going to do the same treatment on the south side of the intersection.
Good, because it is a clunky intersection.
Yeah, it's odd that one side is squared up, but the other side is still at an angle. But when we get done, that south side will be squared up also.
Well, this Greenwood's one of the streets I ride my bike on to get to the trail.
Okay.
So I noticed that it's amazing how in just days you can see potholes get bigger.
Well, it's this time of year. It's the worst time of year. As that frost is coming out of the ground, you got flexible pavement on top of a muddy base over a solid ice ground. It's bad.
So I know people have said the Rose Parade used Greenwood. They're not doing it this year. So maybe that's one of the reasons because of the construction.
I don't think so, because we had scheduled our construction around the Rose Parade.
Oh.
One thing about them moving is it frees us up to start a week earlier. The thing is, the Memorial Day Parade, Memorial Day, it still uses Greenwood, so we want to make sure we're not digging up the road until after that parade. So that'll be starting in June. Well, like I said, that's just a surface treatment. We're actually going to do most of that construction with the road open, because it's 3 lanes and the nature of the work. People are going to have to slow down. There'll be flaggers and there'll be some delays, but for the most part, it won't be a hard closure like you're seeing over on West Ave right now.
Uh, since we're talking about Griswold to Morel, and I know this isn't your area, but I wondered if you had any knowledge of what's happening on the site of the old Griswold school.
I do not have any knowledge.
Because something's happening. They're starting to chop trees down. There's orange stakes. They're
Oh,
marking.
I can tell you what's happening there, where
Oh.
the trees came down, and we're building a sidewalk through there as part of our Griswold Street project. One of the things, I think we've talked about this before, I told you when we do repaving, we're doing the sidewalk ramps. Well, it's a federal requirement that when you upgrade a road for one user, you have to upgrade it for all users. Meaning, our roads aren't just there for motorists, they're also there for pedestrians and bikers. That's why when we do a road, we have to do the sidewalk ramps. It also means we need to fill in those gaps in the sidewalk, because there's that block between Greenwood Griswold and Randolph, where there was no sidewalk. Why there was never any sidewalk there, I don't know how that came to be, but we're filling in that gap so that way people have somewhere to walk instead of in the street or down the grass.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That explains it. All right, and bridge. We've got a big bridge project about to start.
Correct. We're going to be starting in May on the East High Street Bridge over the Grand River, down there by Elrow Steel, and the one between Elrow and Mycore Drive.
Because there's two High Street bridges. There's two East High Street bridges over
Right.
the Grand River.
Like we were talking about, I refer to one. The one we're doing is the East High Street Bridge. It's down by Elrow, and then there's the West East High Street Bridge, was over there by Omnisource. Now the one we're doing is it's not a complete bridge replacement. We call it a bridge rehabilitation, meaning it's going to get a whole new deck. It's going to get new rails along the side. But while we're doing this, we're also widening it. I don't know if you've been through there much, but the road kind of comes through and it kind of narrowed through the bridge. We're going to widen that bridge out so it's a little more user-friendly, especially down there in the industrial park. Of all the users who want a narrow bridge, it's not two trucks trying to pass each other.
All right. That makes a lot of sense. So we're going to have a lot of new bridges in the area once this construction season is done.
Yeah, we've been doing a little bit of bridge work every year, but we've still got old bridges. I know the bridge over on the Martin Luther King Jr. Drive down there by the State Building. That's still a 1903 bridge. So,
oh wow!
I mean, do the math. It's what we talk about a lot of things being 100 years old, but that's going on 120 years old.
Yeah. So that's slated.
Well, it's one we're always looking for opportunities to work on it. It's an interesting bridge. It's an earth-filled bridge, an earth-filled arch. They built a concrete arch, reinforced it, and then just put earth in it. And I think if you're not paying attention when you go across it, it doesn't look like a bridge because there's grass.
Yeah, and if you're looking from the Grand River, like along the Riverwalk Trail, you can see it's the concrete arch is just chipping away like crazy.
I assume, but I don't know if this is true. But Michigan Avenue and the buildings that ran through, they went right. I was looking at an old aerial photograph, and there used to be a building that went on the south side. There was a building over the Grand River. I think back in the day, people didn't even know there was a river there, but it was so built up that I'm sure that bridge was overbuilt. The other thing was the trolleys that used to go over it. If it was built to handle those, it's probably, at the time, it was probably built appropriately for the trolleys.
Yeah.
It's overbuilt, but at the same time, now it's overbuilt, but it's also old. It's got its cracks. All that steel in there is being impacted by time. So, it's not critical that it be replaced immediately, but it is starting to be critical that we pursue it and find something for it.
Yeah, and all the differences and improvements in engineering and construction, the fact that 1903 we didn't have cars and trucks like we do today. I mean, there was horses,
like I said, but you had the trolley cars going over.
That's about it. I mean, as far as something heavy.
Right.
Wow. And then Washington, that bridge next to Dollenberger's. Is that bridge?
Oh, on South Cooper.
Yeah.
Over there between Dollenberger's and the train station.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one's MDOT is pursued. That's actually an MDOT road with an MDOT bridge. I think the bridge was built long before MDOT even existed, but they are putting together a project to work on that in the next few years. But the time it takes to go from like concept, pull the trigger, let's do this, until actually building it is it's going to take a couple years.
Sure.
The other thing with that is the city's asked them, and they're working with us to replace the water main that goes under that bridge also, because that's one of our main line that goes from the plant out to our tank. So, that's going to add a lot of work to that project too.
Yeah, and I don't think it's really makes sense to do that until the railroad bridges are done, because we've limited
Yeah,
east,
those-
north-south.
Right.
Yeah,
Those railroad bridges will be done this year, and this that bridge over the Grand River down by the train station, that's still a couple years out.
it seems like the MDOT bridge railroad projects are they're moving along pretty fast. I mean, you can hear them pounding, sinking
They're working.
pilings or whatever all day long.
There's just so much work to be done out there, and then the other thing is, they're working around train schedules. I think the trains have adjusted their schedule somewhat, but at some point, trains have to go through.
Right.
So, and there's a whole procedure to, securing the site before they come through. You don't just wait till you hear the horn and then scurry out of the way. Like, they have to,
Yeah.
they have to knock off and make sure everything's safe for the train to go through. It's a big deal.
I get it. Well, we appreciate your time today and all the great work all you, your team, and your contractors are doing to improve our infrastructure. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. From the City of Jackson Department of Engineering, Troy White. Next up on the show, we've got